Hello, everybody. Quick couple of thoughts for reflection on today's scripture readings from the Mass. This is Thursday, March 26th, 2020. Yeah, 26th. A proposal for reflection on these readings is our tendency to forget who God is. And as a corollary to that, our tendency to not only forget who God is, um, but to implicitly kind of pretend that we are God, right? There's the famous slogan, of course, of God is God and we are not. And it's important that we remember that and keep that straight. But that comes up in all of our readings today, especially when we go a little before each of them to get a little bit of context. So in our first reading from Exodus, we see the Lord's response to Moses after the Israelites have created the golden calf and begun to worship it as here is the God who brought us out of Egypt, which is, of course, ridiculous, right? It's of course not the God who brought them out of Egypt. But the striking thing about this, to me, is less so in the Lord's response to Moses and Moses's nearly heroic and very faith-filled intercession on the behalf of the people, but is the fact that Aaron, his brother, who had been there every step of the way through the events of the Exodus, was the one leading the charge in a sense, or at least acquiescing to the people in crafting the very altar that then goes before this golden calf. And that strikes me as quite interesting. And then Psalm 106, we have that fantastic line to really drive home what the Israelites have done here, right? They exchanged the glory of God for the image of an ox that eats grass, right? And when you put those two next to each other, right, they exchanged the glory of God for an image of an ox that eats grass. Not even a real ox that eats grass, an image of an ox that eats grass. That level of forgetting who God is, despite being very recently removed from the events of the Exodus, which would have been very difficult to forget, surely, is striking. And we see a similar dynamic in the Gospel of John in chapter 5. So shortly after healing the man who has been ill, who no one else would help, the scribes and the Pharisees seek to, they begin hatching their plans against Jesus at this point, merely because he healed on the Sabbath, right? And so the gospel that we get today is Jesus looking at them, and almost in a sense it feels like making a plea for credibility, going, listen, you needed multiple witnesses. The law says multiple witnesses need to be there. Look at all these witnesses. You've got John the Baptist. You've got the works that I've done. You've got the testimony of the Father to me. You've got the prophecies that have been fulfilled by my actions, right? He goes, why do you not believe? If you believed Moses, why do you not believe here? And so these are people who, have seen Jesus, have seen his workings, who know the law, who know very well all of what is pointing towards him, despite, of course, controversy about the coming of the Messiah. And all of these challenging readings lead me to a point, honestly, of comfort, because I forget who God is a lot. Again, I tend to think that I can fix things, right? And we often have this idea that prayer is easy when things are going well, or we tend to forget about our prayer when things are going well, but it's when times are tough that suddenly we start praying a lot. And I actually sometimes find that I have an opposite dynamic. When things are going well, I'll often pray quite well, but when things get tough, for some reason, I tend to think that I am God and he is not, and I need to fix this, which of course is ridiculous. But in both of these readings, if Aaron can forget who God is, and if the people who've just been brought out of Egypt through the Exodus can forget who God is, and yet still be forgiven and find peace and healing in God's love, and if the scribes and the Pharisees, right, and the followers of Jesus who've seen all of these events, if even they can be confused about who Jesus is, then me, 2,000 years removed from these events, even further from the events of the Exodus, when I forget who God is, I know I can come back. And so, friends, I would suggest for reflection that we look at the way in which during these very trying times, to be sure, um, we have hope because we are not God. God is God and we are not. And while we definitely need to take prudential measures and seek to help with the situations that we can, at the end of the day, um, it's very reassuring and wonderful to rest in the knowledge that God is in control, that He knows what is best, and He will see us through. So I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all safe, and know of my prayers for our church, especially the Diocese of Des Moines, as we continue to look out for one another in these difficult times. God bless everybody.